All right, so we're talking to Vance today, founder of Junction AI. Welcome, Vance.
Hey, how you doing today, Ethan?
Doing super well. I'm super excited for this conversation and to hear about what you're doing with Junction.
Me
And so
too.
why don't you start us off and tell us a little bit about Junction AI? Kind of what are you building over at Junction AI, and tell us a little bit about the business.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that opportunity. Yeah, so Junction AI, our focus has been, we're an AI focused company, and what we do is we optimize and accelerate revenue by intelligently automating all those manual workflows and manual processes that every organization has. And, typically you'll hear someone go, "Gee, I wish we could do it this way instead," or "I wish it was easier to do this way," or "I wish I could connect to so and so else in that chain of events." That's what we're really focused on, is that ability to help those staff do accomplish those tasks in an automated way that's intelligent and helps them achieve their goals. Ultimately, the goal for that is we want to see an organization, accelerate their ability to run those processes, which gets that revenue in the door maybe quicker or helps them address their cost side of that, grows their margin, make sure we're delivering a business benefit to them.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, with everything that's happening in the world with AI, it seems like all of these companies are asking themselves like, how do I integrate this in a way that like actually helps, and it's not just like a cool new tool. And it seems like you're really answering that question for people in terms of how do you actually support teams with AI tools that achieve ROI and that actually support what the current team is doing, rather than like trying to replace them altogether. And so yeah, that's really exciting.
Yeah, you really nailed it there in that like everybody's got an AI strategy pretty much now, and everyone's got some projects, maybe some experiments, maybe some things they've got in production, but everyone's really focused on it. And, it is transforming industries as we speak. And there's some industries that are much more advanced. There's others that are lagging a little bit. But everyone is moving in that direction. And we've got over 6 years of experience in the AI space. So it's not like we're just brand new to this space. Machine learning has been our bread and butter now for a long time. And I think what's really useful in that is that we've seen things that work, we've seen things that don't work, but it's given us that ability to run a lot of custom projects in the past, creating some products of our own, testing them, and learning from that experience ourselves. So when we go into the market now with our new product and our new platform, and we talk to our clients, it's not just, well, let's go try this out and let's see if this works for you. It's like, no, we've got years and years of experience of seeing, oh yeah, well, here's a risk, or here's an issue we're going to need to mitigate ahead of time, or here's an opportunity you're not thinking of, or here's a gap where you guys could be deploying something in this space and getting benefit for it. That I think is really valuable experience, and it's really changed how we look at AI and machine learning in terms of what our product and platform does too. In that, we started off as a SaaS company, specifically in the marketing advertising space, looking at predicting the results, and that was a great vertical to be in. As we've established more experience in AI the opportunity for us was looking in that automation of an end-to-end workflow. It's not enough just to do one thing, like a vertical of, yeah, we can generate some content for social posts, or we can generate a forecast, or whatever it is. That one thing, yes, very important, but unless it's connected into transforming that end-to-end process that an organization has, all you've really done is accomplish one thing really well, but then you've just moved the bottleneck to the next team, right? And if that next team doesn't have any tools or any capability of processing that better, intelligently automating, then you're not really going to achieve the ROI, whether it's, accelerating that revenue or cutting those costs, or, less human touch points, whatever it is. So that's the experience we've learned, that if you're not addressing this horizontally in an end-to-end process, picking up all those touch points, you're probably not creating the transformation that client, was really looking for from their AI strategy.
Couldn't relate more with that. There's like, as we've seen, there's so many different aspects of this marketing process. There's so many different human touch points. And so would love to hear a little bit more about this idea of like co-pilot, and how essentially what I'm hearing you say is that we can take one marketer, we can take a team of marketing people, and we can basically just empower them to accomplish more faster, to go to market faster with ideas, to get more customer research faster. A lot of times this process of getting customer research, as we know, is extremely lengthy. And it sounds like what you're building is really being able to collect a lot of that data and convert it into on the ground tactical marketing campaigns a lot faster, to actually be able to show ROI on these campaigns in, maybe the course of a month long cycle versus like a 6 to 12 month cycle.
Yeah, you've identified two really important things for us. And one is that idea of human co-pilot. I mean, co-pilot's been sort of one of the mainstays mainstays of the industry for a little while now. And we really believe in that because we see AI, ML as a partner to the human worker. It helps us do our jobs. It does not take our jobs. It certainly changes our jobs. It changes what we're doing, but that's probably a good thing. We want to enhance what we can do as humans and, extrapolate on that, expand that, and make what we're doing more valuable to what we're doing for our organizations, be it our client or be it, within the organization ourselves. So anytime we can, as we say, 10x the human, we're going to, we're making a big difference on the ROI, but we're also, the humans engaged in the process. And that's really important from our point of view because it's also the human has the domain knowledge. That human's maybe been doing that job for 10 years or 5 years or whatever it is. There's a lot of information that that person has, that team member has about how things actually get done in that organization, the nuances, the judgments around all these sorts of things. You have to bring that into the process. Are there certain things you can fully automate out with an intelligent automation? Yeah, absolutely. There's a certain amount of things that you could fully automate out, but you still would want a human doing some QA points on that or being involved in that. The second thing you mentioned there is, there's a lot of AI systems out there that do generate information or can generate output or content or generate all these sort of things like insights. And we talk a lot about insights, decision-making insights, or insights on research, insights on competitors, benchmarks in a category of what's happening in retail or whatever industry you're in. Great. Lots of AI systems can generate insights for us. I don't know about you, but I get a lot of great information every day from newsletters or insights that I get from different tools we use about our own business. I still have to do something with the insight. Otherwise, it probably isn't that useful. It's great information. Don't get me wrong. I love to read about it. I love to see all these things, but I have to change that. Every one of us are supposed to use those insights to do something in our job, to make a decision, to promote the next stage of that workflow, whatever it is. That insight has to be deployed. And so that's something we really took to heart too, that the human is responsible in the end for the performance of whatever the function is they're doing. They have to be able to deploy an insight into something. So it might be, for example, we look at a category benchmark of what's happening in a category like baby food. Okay, good. We know what's energizing in that category. We know what the competitors' prices are. We know what the latest favorite flavors are, what the things that people buy, the reasons why they're buying the product. Knowing that is one thing, but then deploying that into how do we get a system then that can update 100 product descriptions using that insight right away, as opposed to a human spending weeks rewriting them all and then getting them on Amazon or whatever it is. How do we deploy that insight into producing a report on what's trending on discussion boards or Reddit or on social to personalize something? Now, again, knowing someone's buying behaviors or what they want to buy on is one thing, but how do we deploy that insight into a system then that could constantly and automatically create that content or push that, generate that content for the human then to then review and release and make sure that is, aligned to brand and aligned to the corporate needs. So for us, those two parts of the puzzle have to come together.
Yeah, it almost feels like this connect between strategy and execution, right? At this point in time, like we all want to be doing more of the strategy. We want to be using what we've talked about as tribal knowledge, this like discernment that we have, that we built up, this skill set that we have that is uniquely our own. And like I know personally, I find it a lot more enjoyable to be on the strategic side of things, creating the vision, figuring out what decisions to make. And one of the heuristics that I really like is like if you have two businesses and one takes 1 week to make every single decision and the other business takes an hour to make every single decision, which one's going to go faster? Which one's going to go further, right? And it seems like at this current, like before AI, pre-AI, it is really hard to make decisions because it's like, okay, this is going to take a week, a month, 6 months to actually execute this. And what it seems like you're building is it's actually allowing us to do more strategy because we can take all these insights, take all of these data, and then say like, okay, if it's only going to take the workflow, 30 minutes to write 10,000 product descriptions, like, okay, I can like make decisions faster and I can, leave a lot of the execution side of things up to the AI and then just kind of be in the domain of mastery of strategy and figuring out how to use my tribal knowledge. So can you speak to that a little bit?
I like the way you've put that. It's that ability to put strategy into action in a really rapid way. There's two great points you made there. Again, one is on tribal knowledge, and this is a personal passion play for me in that I've been in a lot of organizations in my career, and worked in a lot of different sectors, and we all have our SOPs. Every organization has a whole bunch of written SOPs, and then we've got other things from legal and risk and compliance, and then we've got our project office, and we have to follow these templates and that templates, and so everything's all, most organizations do a relatively good job of documentation on this. pretty good job of onboarding on this, but what happens when that person has experience and has been doing that job every day, them and their team? Well, they're building up this enormous amount of knowledge of how things actually get done, how the work actually gets processed in a day. So it's not like we're breaking our SOPs or breaking any risk or compliance, but hey, this is how we interpret it. This is how we go and physically go execute those tasks. Now, it might differ from some of the official or formal ways, but it's still really important. And we've all been in that situation, especially at a new role, like, oh, go talk to so-and-so. They know how this gets done. They're the person, they've been doing this forever. They know all the ways of getting it to work, right? Okay. So if we're going to make an intelligent automation system that really works for a company and delivers that ROI as well as the humans can, and do it, as good as the humans, and co-pilot with them and assist those humans, we have to be capturing how they actually do their job, that tribal knowledge that really powers an organization. And I get excited by that because it's not only we get to somehow find out what's in the human head and codify that into a system so that, one, we don't have as much risk on that human. If that person's not there that day, we can still do that work. But also, that's an IP of that company. That is really important IP that should be brought into a system. So if we're tuning a model using not just all the official stuff that we'd use, but also then the tribal knowledge, the feedback the human's giving it on how the work actually gets done, so it can process that next time it runs using that information, as well as risk and compliance, as well as the legal docs, as well as the SOPs. Wow, we've really got a powerful system then, because it's bringing in the formal and the informal knowledge together. And you've got to have that if you want this done right. So you've really nailed it there on the tribal knowledge side for sure. And to me, we've got an agent in our system, and I know you're all about AI agents as well. We've got a variety of different AI agents that run our platform, and some of them are on SOPs, some of them are about bringing brand voice in, some of them are about generating the content. Others are about how do we capture tribal knowledge and tune our models and tune those results to make sure they're taking advantage of what the human knows.
Yeah, it's amazing. Coming to me that like one of the most difficult things for, implementing AI, it seems like what you're really focused on is like meeting teams where they're at rather than trying to make the teams come to you with the AI systems. A lot of these AI systems that I test out and experiment with, it's kind of like when I actually pitch it to companies, there's this sense of like, oh, do I have to like migrate my entire system onto your new system in order to get this to work? And I really love how it seems like you're just trying to meet a team where they're at, saying like every individual has their own understanding and processes, and how do we actually support what's already happening using AI rather than trying to transition from a non-AI all the way to this entire new software that no one knows how to use and you have to train them. It's time
Huge change
intensive.
management cost, huge amount of time, dislocation, all those friction things that just make everyone go, oh God, do we have to? Like, oh really? Not another change, right? I've been through that myself so many times, and I've seen the disruption, I've seen the cost and time. So you nailed it in that. I looked at this going like, well, we got to mimic the way people work now. If we can pick up on that, then we've just reduced that time and cost to actually deploying a system that can enhance your workforce productivity and deliver, the execution of those tasks that you need delivered. So this was a bit of a finding for us when we first started working in AI and selling and working with clients. And we talk a lot about machine learning and all the wonderful benefits. Great. That business person appreciated it, no doubt. Probably got a lot of information they enjoyed, but could they still explain this back to their management committee or their teammates on how this is going to change what they do in terms of, is it going to deliver the content quicker? Are they going to generate content? Are they going to, cut costs, all that sort of stuff? We found that they couldn't really talk to the technology, of course, the way we can as technologists. It was easy for us to talk to the technology. And so we were, this was a challenge. It's like, okay, there's a friction point here, isn't there? Like they're not appreciating technology at the level we are, but yet they know what this technology, they've read the media, they know they need to do something in this space. But as soon as we started talking about, well, what does your workflow look like? How do you do this job today? And who else is involved? What other vendors maybe are providing you some information? How do you get that information? Are they sending you a Word doc every week of this? Or are you downloading a CSV file of the latest search terms or whatever it is, right? Latest metrics on performance? I don't know. When we started talking about someone's workflow and the process that they and their team use, well, every business person can talk to you about that process. They all know every step of that process, and they'll probably sit there and tell you, oh, I wish this could be easier. I wish this would be quicker. Geez, we can't get this data because it's not a unified data source. So we have to have these 3 different separate data silos where we capture this bits of data, and this system does this bit and this system does this bit. They can easily tell you all of the pain points, all the touch points that are slow that they'd like to make faster, all the things that they wish, geez, I wish this could be automated. Okay, that's just flipping how you talk about it. And that's where we got really excited about, how we could build out our platform to go end to end on these things by saying, tell us what your workflow is today. Tell us how you get those data sources in today. We're not telling you to go build a data warehouse and unify it all. No. Oh, you get this in a CSV file? Great. Let's just dump it on our platform as knowledge. Oh, you got this from legal. This is the compliance document. These are the SOPs. Great. Let's just take that in a Word doc or whatever it is, dump it on our platform in an agent that is in charge of compliance. And that just changed our conversation completely with our clients as to talking to them like about what they do in their day and how they do it, as opposed to saying, oh, you got to adopt this great new AI and change all your systems and change all your data and change all your other vendor contracts of how they work with you. That was never going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah, there's the practical realities of I think what I'm noticing is a lot of these like really small companies are adopting it super fast, and they're just shifting their whole team. But if you have lots of employees, it's a lot more difficult, right? And so yeah, I really love that approach, and it seems like even like just kind of monitoring the space in general, I see a lot of these big AI companies kind of going towards the same thing. Claude and Anthropic just released Model Context Protocol, which is it seems like a very similar idea. It's like let's connect everything you already use into the AI environment so you can take actions in the things that you already use, right? Like rather than saying like here's a new AI tool kind of like Figma, it's like what if you just like hook it up and use the model in order to do what you're already doing better? And so I really love that approach that you guys are taking and thinking about this, and especially with the agents as well. It seems like you guys are really doing your best to build out not only workflows but trying to connect the workflows with agents and trying to build out these really comprehensive systems rather than just doing like a lot of times we use this AI and we just like transform one type of data in through AI and we get an output, but a lot of times that output is not the actual end product of what we're looking for. So it seems like you guys are really building these robust multi-step systems using LLMs.
Yeah, it's that multi-step I think is so critical, and that's where AI agents really allow us to have that ability to have that, that them building on each other. So each outputs to the next one, and then they can take up that task and do their job on it, passing it along enriched with the information or the changes or the updates or whatever it is to the next one, and it does its job. And again, you can map those out to someone's workflow, the processes that they run. And your point on small versus small business and how they're adopting, it is a real point of difference. I mean, there's a lot of tools coming out that work for small business. Our focus is in the mid-tier and enterprise, and we really aligned in that space because some of the unique advantages that we've worked on in our system, we know in micro tuning is incredibly important. We've invented some IP around micro tuning. Everyone does fine tuning. That's great, but you need accuracy far higher than that for the solutions that most enterprises need because, class action lawsuits just one step away of them releasing the wrong information. The cost of risk is really high for them. So we've invented some technology, some capability around micro tuning that really allows us to get very, very highly accurate results. And that's critical. The other thing that we look at differently compared to what a small business might look at is that enterprise or mid-tier, they need batch processing. They're not doing 10 items. They're not even doing 100 items. They're probably doing thousands of items or maybe tens of thousands of items or even millions of items. And then it's got to be done every week as well. So we had to build out to look at that enterprise need for, yeah, you got to create these templates that are got to be configurable because rules can change in the middle of the year. The legal compliance could change or whatever it would be. But you've got to create that ability to batch process out a vast number of things. Just to give you an example, a CPG company could have 10,000 or 2,000 products maybe. Well, they might have 100 of those in the same category, but they need to have them up on Amazon, Walmart, and maybe a few other online marketplaces. Well, right now they're having to create that content individually for each of those marketplaces and for each of those products. Well, they can't afford to do that every couple of weeks when, there's some new trends that they want to capture, whereas their small competitors can because they're only dealing with a couple products. All right, well, can we batch process using the latest search terms, using the latest buying cues, the latest insights from consumers, and apply all the rules that need to apply specific to each of those categories, and then generate it out for each of those different marketplaces they want to sell it on? All right, so that's, a couple hundred products times marketplace times all those rules. You can see the number of transactions there. We're talking thousands and thousands of processes that have to happen all at once and can happen, yes, within seconds and minutes, but it's that batch processing to us that really is critical to scale at that enterprise level. And then, like I said, the accuracy, making sure it's super, super accurate because they don't have room for, if you have to have a human come and clean it up every time, again, when you're smaller, you can look at 10 outputs and, oh yeah, you can fix it up. When you're a really big enterprise and you're talking about thousands of these, you need to make that QA process a couple seconds per, not a minute or two of changes, but a couple seconds at most. You need to just hit approve, 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 approve.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it seems like you guys are really putting like guardrails on these processes. Like, AI models still hallucinate. Like they're getting better and better, but they still hallucinate. And so it's like it sounds like you're having the AI kind of like do what you want it to do, but then you're having these guardrails and in compliance aspects here that are particular, problems of much larger businesses and much less a problem for smaller businesses. And so, yeah, I
Yeah,
think
we've
that's
worked we've worked hard on that ability to tune those models down. I mean, you're right. There's that hallucination issue with different tools out there, different models out there. That is a big issue. You can't afford that when you're doing large volumes. So we've had to invent some ways of reducing that out. But that comes to some of the logic as well of how you're training a model and what it needs to be trained on. It needs to be very specific. It needs to understand good and bad examples, and it needs to be forced to be very accurate on the things that it has to be accurate on. It doesn't need to know everything else. It just needs to know only what it needs to know and then be always accurate on it. And that's critical to sort of the use cases we do. But we also look at, we've also used GPT in a different way too, in that traditionally you'd create software, you might create an automation system and you'd hard code it all out, right? That's the normal way of doing it. I've certainly done that over my lifetime. But we also looked at then using GPT ourselves to say, well, okay, how can we go into no code space? And everyone's, now working more in the no code space in this, but okay, you've got a client and they've got some new changes that just happened yesterday. They can't use the word healthy anymore on any of their content that they're writing. All right, well, we just can easily use that to drive our whole instruction set in the system where someone can just go update that agent that maybe is responsible for writing those descriptions that included that word, and you update its instruction set to say, don't use this word anymore. I mean, it sounds simple, right? It is simple for people like you and me. We do this every day. But that's a big change from how things used to get done. And that ability to really quickly make that change onto the instruction set just through natural language like that, or updating a latest compliance document that it has to, a brand voice document, whatever it needs to be, just making those really quick changes in an agent and then being able to reprocess information right away so people can see the results. That's everything compared to, the old way of doing these things where we'd go back and we'd hard code and change it and test it and then we'd release it and test it again. And you've been there, you know what I mean.
definitely. Yeah, I love how it's like it seems like you guys are focused on like how do we make this as user friendly, as consumer friendly as possible. Like if we give this to an enterprise company and then we all their employees are now using this system, how easy can it be for them to actually be able to update stuff? And like you said, I've been in the no code world for a while, and a lot of times it's like, okay, let me like go update this JSON, document or instructions and like change this XML prompt over here, and it gets really technical, and then whoever developed the system is the bottleneck at all points in time whenever something needs to be updated, as opposed to having some sort of user interface, which it sounds like you guys have, where a person can go in and change some of the core docs or instructions, and then it just updates it like in real time.
Exactly. And the other nice thing that we thought was important in that too, and again, this speaks to the enterprise or mid-tier, is that it's not only that you can make those changes really quickly, it's that it's an auditable record as well. We know when the change was made, we can see the change, and AI's got this little bit of a black box inexplainability or unexplainability issue that some people, rightly so bring up. Well, we want to make sure that we can capture the change, when it was made, why it was made. There's some reasoning and some logic behind it so that, when you have to go speak to your managers about, well, why did this come out this way and not that way? Well, you can explain it. You can show why, because we told it to. This is exactly what we told it to. This is exactly the text we said to change, or this is the new document we put in here. We can explain the reason something came out that way. I think that takes away a lot of the sort of maybe the nervousness around those who don't code and don't understand prompting and all that sort of stuff. If you can just say, well, no, but those are the search engine terms that we fed into the system for it to produce this content. Okay, that's explainable. That's easy to understand. It's like, all right, let's get a new list because we didn't like that list, or hey, that list performed really well. Now we know why. This makes it easier for the average business person who's not an AI expert to like be involved in the system and being involved in the logic of the reasoning of what's driving it to achieve that performance. Which brings me to another innovation that I know you were going to ask about next anyhow. And that's an ability to test new information out. And again, thinking of, the human using this, a lot of times we're asked to well, what would happen if we did something, or what would make this work better? How would we perform better if we had this data or that data or whatever it is, right? So we looked at that and thought, well, that would be a really exciting opportunity to build right into our platform. This idea of a lab. So you can have an automation running, and let's just use the product description one. It's generating product descriptions, wonderful, and we've got compliance data, we've got brand voice data, we've got the competitor data, we've got our own SEO data, etc. All right, well, what if we got a new data source? Maybe the internal team has done some research, or maybe they got a data science team internally that's come up with some great new insights of why consumers would buy this versus that. Well, okay, let's take it into the lab on our platform using the exact same automation, the exact same other data sources that they already have, but let's put in this new data source, and then let's run it as a like in a lab situation, a test environment, and see what results we get. See what it produces. See what it changes in the flow of that, through those different agents as it works its way, that information works its way through the models. Great. We have an ability now for someone to actually say, hey, we've got this new information. Let's go test it. Let's have a look at what the test looks like. Is it more accurate? Did it process quicker? Are we happier with the end result? All within a nice, safe test environment that teams can use, and then they can say, "This worked great. Let's promote this out to production." Or that didn't work so well. Let's change the data again. Let's try a different data source in there. Let's see what results we can get in there. And I think that's really exciting because it takes it away from like going to a developer or an engineer and saying, locally you can model this up. We know you can, and you can run some experiments on your laptop, but that's not a real world production system where they're taking in the whole automation of the whole workflow of the data that you'd be looking at, or the execution of the task you're looking at. Our lab allows them to do that in a real world setting, but yet safe.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, that's definitely what I've noticed in terms of like building out these systems where it's like once you build it out and hard code it, it becomes very fragile, and it's like it's then you kind of like take your hands off the wheel and hope that it works right. And
Exactly.
what I've seen like as kind of like a macro trend is that like the people that are creating these like really high quality systems, they're spending countless hours on these prompts and like actually just in the weeds in these testing environments of like figuring out what prompts work well. And a lot of the people that are just entering the space and trying to like really like build these systems, a lot of times the focus is so much on the system itself, where it's like let me just build the most elaborate system as I possibly can without realizing that the thing that actually makes a good system from a great system is the prompts, and that's where you need to spend 90% of your time. The actual like no code system or the systems you guys are building with your guys' software, it's like I wonder if you can attest to this, but like it seems like the actual system itself doesn't take that long to build, but then it's the prompts, the data sets, the instruction. These are what you're like really putting all your time into improving in order to, especially at the enterprise level, like really get those results. And so maybe you can speak a little bit to like that micro tuning process that you talked about. Is that a lot of like just like really the test environments with the data sets and instructions, or maybe you can speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so like overall, before I get into the microtuning side, overall, you're right there in that a lot of people. So what we see in a lot of organizations, and AI's had a sort of a difficult road of adoption in organizations. A lot of time and efforts being spent on it, both internally but also with vendors. But there has been a lot of maybe not fails, but lack of movement into production. We're really, most IT groups in organizations, you can spin up a model, you can do something locally, you can do a small test or a small system. It's not a platform that can be put into production though. It's not an end-to-end capability. It's sort of like an orchestration platform. You do need to be able to go from getting in the original data and raw source or whatever it is, and then, like I said, through all those different steps of all those different agents. Some of them are pre-processing it, some of them are preparing it for the next step, whatever it is. But it's having that ability to have that end-to-end is really different than just saying, "Oh, let's go test something out on a local model on a laptop or whatever it is." So that's part of it. So having that lab ability that has that existing automation there that is already and means that you can just clone it and then go in and do some testing on it. And it's testing it as if it was in a production system with all those other data sources and all those other rules all applying and all those needs for outputting it in this way and that way. It's a real live example. It's not just in theory in the lab, like a traditional lab where we've gone away and done a very vertical or a slice of a testing on it. It's using real data from real systems. So it's a much better example of like how this will really behave in the real world. That's where we get into that ability to then look at different data sets that you're bringing in to bring in better accuracy or to bring in better performance, but also then to affect that tuning that you're doing. Like, all right, if we changed our prompts and we changed the examples that we're feeding into this system or correcting for it, when we're seeing some dynamic view shots that come through, and we're looking at the examples there. We're modifying them. We're maybe going back to the prompt to modify sort of what we've told the system to do. That ability to really quickly iterate again in the system that we built, the platform we built, means that we can then quickly pull in the real data again, the real example, and then get a real result, as opposed to something that's theoretical or outside. So the investment, like you say, is in working through with the business person the knowledge they have in their domain to understand that as best possible, so that when we write that instruction set, the prompts, we're actually taking advantage of them being involved and, getting it right from them and getting it in good detail from them. And that's where the time and energy needs to be, because the whole platform is driven by that, really.
So help me understand how this works a little bit better. It seems like what you're saying is that like the end user, the end consumer is able to actually go in and actually improve and iterate on the system. Like the developer is no longer the bottleneck here. And so is it like one test environment that is kind of like spun up for each client based on the specific systems, workflows, and agents that you've built for them? Or help me understand like what this test environment is and how it kind of like it sounds like empowers the end user to actually improve the systems, without constraints.
So we're working two ways in that. We recognize that right now, most organizations don't have a prompt engineer expertise in-house. Certainly they're starting to develop those skills. And some staff or some team members of clients, yeah, they played around with ChatGPT. They understand the basics of prompting. They've done a little bit, maybe using different products in that they're using, like, their Word or Google Gemini, those products. So they might have some basics in prompting. The way our model is a bit different right now than typical SaaS is we look at this as service to software, and that we're going to manage the platform for you, because it is a full platform for end-to-end product production capability in this. It does take some expert management on that. And also from a service side, that we know how to run the platform really, really well. We're the best people to probably work with you as if you were the client, you're the domain expert in what you do. Maybe you're the merchandiser or marketer or whatever it is, forecaster, I don't know. You're the best person that we need to learn from, but there's probably other people in your team that we need to be involved in as well. Someone who understands maybe risk compliance, someone else understands brand voice, whatever it is. We want to capture all that information. We're probably the best people right now to put that prompt together, that instruction set together. Now, you're going to be the best person to review it to make sure we got it right and to make sure it's accurate. You're also going to be one of the best people to be involved in the QA of the examples it provides as output to help train the model and fine tune it, and then eventually get into the micro tuning side where we get very specific about making it really, really accurate. So it's a combination of our skill set and our team that we've developed through the experience of using our own platform, but also using other people's platforms, and just what we've seen works and doesn't work. So we're not saying like, oh yeah, it's available to 100 people in your organization and let's get them all in there prompting all of a sudden, because oh my goodness, you could imagine you could end up with a real dog's breakfast pretty fast of messy results. So it has to be a little more formalized and controlled into some procedures and processes there. So we provide that service where we do that work on behalf of the clients. Now, the goal is obviously as they get trained up and they get their organizations ready to take on more of those tasks internally, then we start handing those tasks internally over to them, and they can take more of the day-to-day work in that space. And I guess that's where that lab comes in too, is they could go in there and practice some different instruction sets and prompts. They could practice using some different data and learn what they've done and what the impact is, but it's safe, right? It's not going to affect anything that's in production. So that gives them sort of that space. And we see that as an important part of maybe helping that change management process of them being involved in changing some of those instruction sets and learning what the difference would be, but knowing that they've, this is a process or a workflow that needs to keep running in production. It matters to their business. We can't put anything like that at risk at all, because it's too important to the business and keeping things moving. So we just have to be cognizant of, where the adoption challenges are in AI, where everyone's got multiple jobs that they're doing. They're wearing multiple hats in most organizations these days. We can't expect them to be always up to date on the right way to prompt things and the right way to create these instruction sets. And some service from us is important in that space. And especially when you're looking at larger organizations that might have more data privacy issues, more data security, we've got to really be careful of making sure that, like you were saying, every client has their own instance on ours, or they can have an enterprise version of it where it's just dedicated to them. so that way they can run it internally or they can run it on our servers. But it's always about saying, well, what's your privacy? What IP are we protecting here? What data do we have to be really careful on? This isn't going out to public models where it's your data gets shared to everybody else. We got to watch those things because data is a competitive part of a business these days. That's IP in there that helps them be better than their competitors. So it's got to be driven for them. And again, that's how we work and what we do. And that if this is client A's version, it's their data that runs their system, their data that we use in tuning their models, and their staff time that we use in terms of tuning their models. That's to their competitive advantage because that's what their brand is about, or that's what they do better than everybody else. Versus another company that might have a different version of doing it, different types of data they work on. Well, that's their competitive advantage. That's their IP. We've got to make sure it appeals to both of them for their own way and their own way they want to run it.
Definitely. Yeah, it seems like how do you give the clients enough access to the system where they can train it and they can kind of say like what direction they want to steer it in, but not so much access that they're able to, change the hard coding of the information that's
Yeah.
actually running the system.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we've got to make sure it meets very high standards. Again, that mid-tier enterprise focus when we're looking at performance of scaling that performance and making sure it can do those volumes and the efficiency of our platform is really critical. We've got to make sure that what we're doing continues to support that efficiency and speed that they expect they get. I think one thing that I get excited about in our platform too is just that ability it has to support what I'd say is highly decentralized operations. Let's put it that way. In any given organization, you've got a lot of different people from different teams that need to work together. Right now, they pass work along in different ways. They all have their own data that they're getting. They might have their own vendors they're working with for different, data insights or data sources. Have different SOPs from one unit to the other. But yet, it all is still to achieve one ultimate outcome that organization needs to achieve out of that supply chain, that internal supply chain of what they're doing. Again, it's an area I get kind of excited about because rather than trying to say, oh, let's centralize and force everyone into one version of the world, how do we support that wonderful decentralized ability of all these groups to then come together to get something achieved together? And that's one of the things I really like about our system, and that, yeah, you could have marketing, and one of the AI agents in there is all about branding. Okay, great. Marketing can have their role in there and play their role in there, and they don't have to change what they're doing. And this is how they work, and this is the documents they use or the data they get from their vendor that helps them do research on their brand voice, whatever it is. But we didn't tell them, oh, you got to change to this, and you got to merge with this other group and do it their way. It's like, no, this is the way marketing does it. Okay, great. Then we move on to the next groups. That, I think there's a lot of power in that decentralized model that we've taken, that this isn't sort of a master system that they have to change everything else internally to match to. No, we've allowed the support of that decentralized capability, or that ability to see that difference in each of those groups and yet still connect them all together and get that end results. I think, for me, that's one of the areas that I find really exciting.
Yeah, it's super exciting. It seems like this difference between starting from top down versus bottom up, right? A lot of times these big corporations, it'll be like, let's just top down enforce like a way to do things. But it seems like you guys are really approaching things from a bottom up standpoint of there's all these different cross-functional teams that you're trying to coordinate together. What are all the things that they're already doing, and how do we like bottom up lift them up in order to use AI to make everything more effective from the ground, in a decentralized manner, as opposed to because it's like when you have that bird's eye view, when you're all the way top down, it's like it's really hard to know, like you kind of said with the tribal knowledge aspect, it's really hard to know what the intricacies of all of these different teams are. And so maybe it's actually more effective to coordinate something by just lifting up each team, as opposed to trying to assume you know everything about every team in order to create the perfect system or something like that.
I like the way you put that, and I love that idea that it's a grassroots up sort of approach. And I think that's so important because it is easy from, the manager myself. It's pretty easy to, say things at a strategic level, but that's not how work gets done at the day-to-day, worker level. And you kind of hit on a really important point there, in that we often have we have clients that say we need to get these decision-making insights. Well, you can create a decision-making insight, but let's look at where the underlying data comes from on that. And if we're starting it from the bottom up, you've got to have really good data. You got to get all that organized. You've got to get that system working, or those workflows happening, in order to actually ensure that the insights that you're using at those management levels, whatever your output is to create that, then are more accurate, they're more relevant, they're more reliable. So as much as I love to say, let's look at the strategy and what are your management decision-making insights you need for this system to produce, let's back up and say, first of all, do we need to actually do work in that workflow that transforms the existing data that you have to bring in other knowledge, like you said, the tribal knowledge, to bring in other things like that, or other metrics that need to be brought in? Are there other data sources that need to be acknowledged that you need to bring in there so that your output that you're getting, whatever you're executing out of that, to then generate those decision insights for management, well, then you know they're more accurate. You know that they're actually using the relevant information or a broader knowledge base of information, because it'd be too easy otherwise to end up, with a bunch of insights that we could come up with and then no way to really know whether they're really truly relevant or how to deploy them the right way. Like, you've got to put context around these things. So how do we generate the context as well that can go with it? When we're talking about financial sides or numbers or forecasting, we often, we'll see cases where, like, oh, we need this done or these reconciliations done or whatever it is. It's like, or, we want to forecast on how we attack this new market. Okay, but do you actually have the data in good shape in your existing products or whatever it is that they're getting? Is that already in good enough shape to actually support those decision insights at the management level? Because if not, we got to start there. We got to get, bread and butter. Let's get that working first, get that side right. Then what we can generate off of that, those more value add insights maybe, then we know they're going to be more accurate and more relevant because we've already attacked it from the grassroots level and dealt with that issue and cleaned it up, got those processes working, maybe taking it from taking 10 weeks to get this task done down to 2 weeks. All right, now suddenly it's way more current and way more relevant. Good. Those insights are better management insights now.
Absolutely. And it's more effective insights, and they're probably going to move the needle a lot more effectively if they're coming from the grassroots, as opposed to trying to just like extract the insights in a way that maybe is less relevant.
Yeah, yeah. And I've heard that comment quite a few times now. Like, when we look at, you can use GPT to generate great summaries off vast data sources. Okay, good. What's the context? If I don't know the context, I'm not sure why it's relevant or how to use it. Okay, you've got to fill in those blanks and make sure whatever summary or whatever you've generated out of that was fed that, had the right context around it or was relevant so that you can explain that. Again, it comes back to that explainability point. If I'm going to use an insight or I'm going to use something that's generated, I do need to understand that, because someone at some point is going to ask me to explain, why did you take that decision? Why did you deploy that campaign? Why did you give me this change in our forecast? Well, if I can't explain that context, then I'm probably not going to get trusted very much, or no one's going to approve that budget and tell me to go spend it and do it, right? Or they shouldn't. I'd certainly want to ask about context and relevance and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's
That's
like
why
this
for us,
process.
like our lab, what we put in our lab and what we put in our dashboard, we do measure, we give them accuracies of measure. We tell them completion rates, time it takes to do these sorts of things. I mean, those are some basic metrics, but when you think about building out further metrics on that, like if I'm looking at energizing, we have a use case that has energizing and fatiguing content so that we can understand what's trending in a market at any given moment. All right, if I just have one phrase or maybe a couple words of something that's energizing, I don't know the context to use it in. Does that apply to the consumer? Does it apply to the weather? Does it apply to whatever's happened that day? If I don't have some context around it to explain it to me, then I'm not going to probably use it the right way. So I think that's really important when we look at these systems, in that, one, you can have that explainability, but then also that it can generate, you know what you're generating from, and you can test different content in there to see how it can affect that context of how you'd use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it feels like kind of like putting training wheels on these AI models, right? Where it's like you don't want to just release all of your control in an instant and give the AI total power to make all decisions and give all insights, right? And it's like, how do we like slowly let our foot off the gas and start seeing like, okay, if we give AI a little bit more control here, does it get the right answer or not? And it's,
Yeah.
it seems like you guys are really focused on like how do we kind of slowly transition to more and more AI instead of just all at once, and then that creates a lot of that later down the line.
Exactly. You got to do a POC, you got to do a small pilot, and then another small pilot, and another small pilot, and it's kind of like a marathon, but that's where you're going to achieve that ROI. You asked a question a few minutes ago around the client and engagement side, and whether it was different for every client or we create new prompts for every client. So what we've done in our system, one of the advantages of our system is that we've identified, now we've got over 10 use cases in there. So these are 10 different standard automations that we've seen really, especially in the retail marketing world and in that space, that are really valuable in that space. And so we've built out generic forms of those intelligent automations that are already in the system. So this means that a client could come in and say, the product description one or a social one or market research one or whatever it is. Well, we already got an automation that does that with some example data in there that we can show off right away. But it also triggers, the opportunity to think, oh, we've got that data. We can get that from XYZ, or we have that already coming in from this vendor or this system that we have for social listening, whatever it is. So it makes it a really quick start as well, that we don't have to start from zero for these clients. They can come in, test out an automation that already exists just by changing the data set in it that can be used their data set. And this is that's our quick start. We're not starting the prompting in the system from zero. The system's already there. It actually is running. The platform is already there. And we actually have 10 different automations that you can test out right now if you want. Now, do you need a different automation outside of those 10? Great, we can build that out for you too. But what we like to do is say, let's, if it's a close enough use case to one of the 10, let's test that out and work on that one and look at it. And then let's learn about what other gaps that are unique to you or special for you that you want to further on. Maybe we need to add a couple more agents that do something different than a competitor might do. And that customizes it more towards, or curates it, let's say, more towards that use case of that client. But they're not starting from zero at least. And that's, again, for us, that's important. We've worked out some of the kinks for them so that we can get them moving much quicker and getting, some results quicker, hopefully too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it seems like you could see the benefit. It's probably going to be a lot easier to understand given that that's the case, rather than saying like, let you need to take the leap of faith and we're gonna build it all out custom, and then after multiple months it'll be this perfect system. And it's like, no, here's exactly what you're gonna get. We're just gonna customize it. I feel like that's seems like a lot better strategy in terms of helping AI implementation in some of these enterprise organizations.
Oh, I mean, I know you've seen the data on this too. Some of the benchmarks that you see released in some of the big consulting houses do these reports. I think one of them I saw recently that the average to get a really well-tuned model is between $2 and $5 million. All right. Okay, I get it. I can imagine that, but that's a challenge we took on. It's like, no way. We've got to be able to do it far faster and cheaper, far cheaper. I mean, and the average time can be, I think I saw anywhere from 90 days just to get a base one going up to a year to get it really tuned properly. We're like, that is way too slow for today's market. Way too slow when you think of industries that are constantly having to change or constantly having new data or stuff like that. So yeah, that's why we went with this idea. We've got to build out these use cases that are already there. The whole platform already runs. So it's really just about changing data and therefore creating a new model or a model that's highly tuned to their use case. We're talking a week or two, maybe 3 or 4 at most. We're talking tens or maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars to get set up, not millions of dollars to get set up. And then we're talking about the ability to say, and you want to use the lab to test out some other things, we can do that right now at very low cost, as opposed to saying, oh, that's going to be a huge software project and we're going to have to build this out, and that typical, oh, it's going to be 6 months or a year and millions of dollars later. And meanwhile, during that time, how much has already changed in the market? How much has the technology already changed? Right away from our system, we said, let's be model agnostic. What if someone wants to use Claude? What if they have their own model they've already developed? What if they ask us to develop a model? What if they want to use ChatGPT? Great, let's just have the ability to bring in any of those models, because that makes it fast. That makes it rapid to get to. It answers, it aligns to their needs, and it reduces that huge upfront investment that so many organizations have had to make. In some cases, have had to pretty much write off because they were able to maybe generate that model for millions of dollars, but they still didn't have a platform to put it into production. That's gotta hurt. So we addressed that and said, now we can do this for way cheaper, way faster than pretty much everybody else. But that comes from 6 years of experience and the investment we've made in our platform to do the client work we've done. We've had to make that investment to make sure we can do it profitably, efficiently, and really quickly for them too.
Yeah, it seems like you guys have really built up a lot of the infrastructure to be able to handle a lot of these systems, where it's like a lot of the people entering into the market are starting with just like, how do I build like a no code simple like Frankenstein solution to a lot of these things. And it
Exactly.
seems like you have the multiple years of infrastructure built up, and now you can easily onboard someone into your system without having to say like the back end is just like a no code Frankenstein sort of thing. And yeah, I mean, just hearing that it takes like a year and millions of dollars, it just blows my mind, because it's like 12 months in the AI, the pace of progress in the AI space, like you could have a totally different technology that is light years ahead in 12 months, and you don't even know what that future is going to look like. And so, yeah, I mean, being immediately applicable feels more and more like the thing that you're shooting for.
Yeah, and you want to be able to make sure you're building in that flexibility too, because yeah, okay, we got this platform, but that idea of being able to use different models, well, there's different models are better at different things. Some, some specialize in different things. Some have better security in this area. Some are known to be better at, whatever. They all have different advantages. And so again, not locking a client into something that isn't going to necessarily be in their best benefit. If it's better that we use this model because we know it is compliant to XYZ or does this quality better, but this other one would do the other portion of the work better. We want to be able to offer that capability and not say, oh, well, no, you're locked into just one solution only, and this is the only result you're going to get. That's not going to be fast and good enough for today's environment. It also doesn't really encourage that competitive edge that we want to make sure our clients have, and having that capable flexibility of the platform and that ability to make sure they're using the best in class for each of those steps in that workflow, and catering to the specific needs of each of those steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the resilience part is key. I like that you added that in there.
Yeah. And
What do you make?
you're right about the investment in the platform. I mean, and that's we're lucky we've had some great investors that have been very patient for us to build this platform out, because most of the time we've been in this, I would almost call it stealth mode in a way. We've been building this platform out for quite a while now, from the learnings of our custom work that we've been doing over the years, the products we've built. We've invested in building that back end of that platform out. I call it it's the unsexy plumbing, right? But it's got to be done, and it's got to be done right. And if you're working at enterprise level, it's got to be done with security, performance, scaling, all those considerations in place. You can't do that after the fact, because you can't prove you can do the work, or you can't live up, or you can't make those mistakes on an enterprise account. So you've got to put that investment, that time and effort up front to creating it, in order to be at the position we're at today, where we can say, yes, hand on heart, we know we can do these use cases. And I think, that's something you're pretty aware of too in the scene too. There's an awful lot of promises of what AI can do, and the media the media loves talking about, wow, it's going to solve every problem or cause every problem on Earth. This is the idea of having our 10, right now 10 use cases, and we'll have 20 use cases in there in a couple months. But these are the ones that can be done today really well with the state of technology today. So let's focus on those ones, because there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in every one of these companies, every one of these clients of solving today's use cases. Yes, we'd all love to dream, but can it also do this? Well, you know what? AI can do some of these things now, but it's not doing it accurately enough, or maybe not efficiently enough, or maybe not cheap enough from the cost of compute. But probably in 6 months or a year it can. So let's get your stuff sorted today on the ones that we can do, because they're probably going to connect into that automation into the future. And, I'm thinking about there in text versus images. We can do very accurate work in text today. No problem there. Image stuff, you want to generate images, or you want to do that sort of stuff. It's getting better, but as you know, it's not 100% yet. It's not quite there yet. So let's do what we can get today, high quality done. We know it can be a good return on investment for today, and let's prepare you to get going on those more, the more expansive use cases, we'll say, where it's not yet perfectly done today.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially on the especially on the security side of things. I think that's something that you guys will probably have over, like, a lot of the small, like myself included, the security is a very difficult part to get right, because when you're building these smaller systems, it's really hard to control where the data is going and to make sure that it is secure, right? And so it sounds like, in you guys focusing on the infrastructure for multiple years, now that you have that built out, it's probably a lot easier to promise security and to be able to actually deliver on it. And yeah, it's like these wild promises of what AI can do. In building out custom projects myself for clients, I've noticed, like, okay, like the actual use case of it is like I'm running like a multi-prompt chain of like 10 different prompts, but then I have to add like an output parser at the end of every single one to make sure I get it. Like, I can't just trust the model to do what it wants. And so at the end of the day, it's like the promises are very hard to deliver on, and you have to build out those guardrails really strategically in order to be able to actually do what you think it can do, right?
Yeah, and to do what you think it's going to do in terms of that accurate output for that execution of the task of that workflow, but to do it securely and to do it at a performance level that matches their expectation. I mean, those are the three ingredients, right? And you can't fail on any one of those, because you're in trouble. You're gonna get your client in trouble or yourself in trouble. You're gonna get both in trouble in the end. But we've had to, we work really closely with our vendors, and we go through the regular assessments and performance assessments, security assessments, privacy assessments, all those sorts of stuff. And yeah, because when you're dealing with an enterprise and they want to bring their data in, well, like I said before, that is their IP. People use that whole data is the new oil or data is the new gold, that sort of thing. Well, it is in the sense that what you can generate out of data today in terms of the model that you can train with, different that you create from all that. Well, that is essentially productizing their IP or their data into something that does something. Okay, that's really important. You can't mix that with other people's data, nor should you, because that would probably dilute the value of what their model is. So we would never, we would never do that. We got to make sure that everybody's data is treated very importantly, very privately, very securely, because that is generating something that is relevant to their product and their IP. That's their advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a question that I'm asking myself and seeing. It's like the world of data is changing, and especially as these models are just being trained on the entirety of the internet, and now these models are starting to create new data in order to train itself. And so it is a huge question of like where is the data coming from, who owns the data, what is IP, and I'm sure you probably have some thoughts on this, but like I honestly don't know. Like, is IP changing? Like, is it going to be harder to have IP when you can spin up, IP using AI, or like I think it's an active question to ask ourselves of like how do we work with this data in a way that is secure, is private, is focused on maintaining that IP rather than I don't know. There's a lot of active questions in my mind in that world
There's a
because it
lot there.
seems a little hazy. Go for it.
No, you jumped into a really interesting area there. I love this area because one thing I get terrified when I see how many people just use, they just go take company stuff and they throw it into, ChatGPT or any of those systems just like that. Those systems are great, but like you're taking your company information in there and you're just throwing it in there and getting a result. And it's like how many, there's an enormous number of people using these systems, even though they're not really supposed to use them, and companies will often have rules against using them. So that's an issue, and that's why I think it is really important that companies start making the investments now into platforms like ours, where they can control and manage that, and still give those team members the capability of using these great tools, but securely managed, auditable, purposeful, all those sorts of things. So that is critically important. And then the second point you bring up there that I think is really important too is like we have to start thinking more about, sure, data is important. It might be the new oil, but it's what we create out of the data that matters. It's those insights that matter. And that's an IP in a product sense that I think we're starting to, a lot of us, there's a lot of people having to do a lot of thinking around that, in that, yeah, you've got a physical product maybe that you sell or that you manage, or, physical clients and that sort of stuff. What you're generating from the insights that you create or the models that you create, sort of like a different product. It's an IP that should be unique to your organization. So again, that's something that I think is so important about what we do in our micro tuning capability. That doesn't, it's more than fine tuning. It brings it down to that very highly specific, accurate level. Then you mix that with the tribal knowledge that you get from the staff of that actual organization. You're creating a great resource for your company. You're capturing information that's out there that's currently not captured or codified in any way. It's in human heads. You're merging that with your existing data, your existing processes, all those sorts of things. You are creating an IP product that is special to your company. And it's sort of like, we all talk about in startup world and all that. Oh, what's your secret sauce? Every company's got a secret sauce. Well, a lot of that secret sauce is what you're doing every day, the data you're using every day, what your team's doing every day, the value add that they're putting in there. Well, the more we can bring that into this modeling, the different a model or a variety of models, the more we're kind of in a way productizing the intellectual property that is what is part of your everyday operations. Okay, great. Now that we've got that in that model or models and protected and managed, now we can deploy it in ways that advance your company's goals, advance those, optimize your revenue, speed things up so it's costing less, or lower marginal costs for development, whatever it is. That's when you get to the exciting use of it. And so, those are the areas that I sort of spend a little time thinking and reading about now, is how we're changing that idea of what IP looks like, and things that we just took for granted before, like SOPs, compliance, all that sort of stuff. Well, how does that actually affect how is that affecting your product now, and how can you turn that into an advantage, an IP advantage of how, you incorporate that data into one of these intelligent automation platforms like ours? That's now part of your whole platform, of your suite of, I guess, background, I don't know, building blocks of whatever it is you're turning, you're generating to make into what you're trying to create and output, to sell or to update marketing materials, whatever it is.
Yeah, it is a really fascinating question. And, as you're speaking, one of the things that's really coming to me is like, it's these larger companies, they have a suite, like you said, of SOPs, of processes, of systems, of people, and of teams. And like a small company, even a small company that's using AI really well, you can't just come up with all of these systems and processes and things out of thin air. Like it takes a lot of time to really build these out. And so, like, no matter how big the pipe dream of AI is to basically like create systems out of thin air, at the end of the day, kind of going back to the start of our conversation, this the strategy component and like the tribal knowledge and being able to like actually do that strategy, I think that's personally, I think that's where like the IP is moving. It's like the company's ability, like whatever the core strategies and the core, systems that the company has in place to offer value to the market, that's something that has taken them likely many, many years to really refine. And some newbie into the market with that can just create systems out of thin air, they don't have the interaction with the market, the interaction with the customers. Their systems are just thought up like, hey, AI, go create me this elaborate 50-step system to do XYZ. It's like, well, you have no interaction with the market. You haven't refined it. You haven't actually given it to people. And so it almost seems like the ability to create the systems, the ability to scale the systems is becoming easier with AI, but knowing what the systems should be and why they should be that way, that is like something that's really difficult to get right. And a lot of these enterprise organizations, that's what they've been working on for years and years and years. So that's where they're ahead.
Yeah, you've nailed it there, and I love the way you've put that because that is that cumulative knowledge of over all that time, all those really experienced people that have worked there, been engaged in that for years and years, all the interactions they've had, that is their competitive advantage. That is strategically what they've got to deploy to grow faster, to be better than their competitors, to be loved by their customers more, whatever it is. It's that ability to deploy that strategy in an effective, fast and responsible way that makes a difference for them in the marketplace. And if they can't, I mean, this is that difference we're seeing in the market. Those that have, successfully adopting AI are growing dramatically faster than those that aren't growing. Well, they're, those that aren't adopting aren't going to catch up because the growth rate on the other ones that have figured this out is that much better, right? So you got to get in, but I think it comes down to exactly what you're saying there. It's because these early adopters that have spent time figuring this out have realized actually this is how we get our strategies executed faster, better, cheaply or whatever it would be. This is how that happens. I love the way you've made that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's in my world, it's this difference between the builder and the market facing person, the seller. And this is what I've seen mostly is that there's a strong bias towards the builder, but not towards the person that's actually interfacing with the market itself. And so, yeah, I like your guys' approach here, and that's like kind of the strategy I've taken personally in my own ventures as well, is like interface with the market as much as possible, and kind of the building is actually less important. Like, yes, I'll do the building, I'll like figure out
Yeah.
how to get that really solid, but it's actually more important to interface with the market and to get the insights from that. And it seems like you guys are building the actual tools that both let you interface and get insights from the market, but also let you take action on those insights faster, as opposed to let's build out this elaborate AI system, whether or
Yeah.
not it's helpful or not.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you've come back to that point that it's ultimately a business person. Organizations have IT departments, absolutely, but the money, the budgets come from the business people that need to deliver something that customers buy or whatever it is, right? They're the ones that have that immediate need. So we have to always think about we're not selling development services. We're not selling AI data science and AI engineering. That's what we buy to build our product. They are buying something that they get a result from, something that allows them to execute their business faster, better, quicker, all those great sorts of things. That's what that business person needs to be, making sure that she's got relevant insights, relevant updated product descriptions done faster, done quicker, and done customized to every marketplace she needs to put them up in. She's not buying, Python and servers from Azure and all that. That's not what she's looking for. No, she's buying that business outcome. Our job is to make sure we take care of all that stuff, so that she is focused on, or he, whatever, the client, they're focused on that business outcome that they're trying to achieve. The more we can keep the conversation on that, I think the healthier it is because that also helps us understand and realize that this is a use case that actually involves that it's the use case that matters. It's the outcome that they're trying to achieve that matters, not the way it's been coded out or the all the specifics like that. It's easy to, it's we're technologists. It's easy to get into the technology and have great fun talking about all the specifics of the technology. And I know you've got a couple of interviews with other team members of mine who love talking about the technology, and we'll get you right into that. I'm not a coder myself, so for me, it's the business side that I care about, and being able to talk to the business side of these things is what I think is really, really important, because ultimately that person that we're selling to, they have a performance criteria they're trying to achieve. They want to get their bonus, right? They want to keep their jobs, but they also want their bonus. They want to be a 5 out of 5. And so how do we help them be 5 out of 5? Well, we help them by them achieving their goals quicker, being better at it, being better than their competitors, reducing their marginal cost, allowing them to scale to that plan. They've got this great big goal they need to achieve this year. How are they ever going to get to that? They can't hire more people constantly. The labor market's tight, but it's also expensive. All right, well, how can we help you scale to achieve your goal? Okay, that's not a technology. It doesn't have to be a technology discussion about, how much we can process and how much the cost of compute is or stuff like that. It's like, no, we have to take that part of the conversation out and understand, all right, well, what's the current impediments you have? All right, well, you don't have enough people there to generate this content every day. Good. We know technology can solve that out. But what are the rules around generating it? Tell us about the business conditions around it. That's what we need to understand really well in order to serve that need, and then curate how those, like we were talking about before, the prompts and instruction sets. We don't use the word customize too much there. We like to say we're curating what we're doing for you to suit your specific flavor of that business case or that use case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, something I talk about on the my channel a lot is direction over how, right? And it seems to me that the macro shift is that knowing exactly where you want to go and why, and the what is becoming more and more important as the how becomes easier and easier and easier by AI, where it's like a lot of you can run in a thousand directions, 1 foot in every direction, or you can know exactly what, why, and like and where, and then you can move 1,000 steps in one direction because you have all of the AI systems like pushing you forward, rather than just being like this frantic person that's like moving really fast in every single direction, right? And so it's
Exactly.
really, and I think I kind of like you've talked about and touched on in this conversation, that's what the enterprise businesses do really well, because they have that much more experience understanding why they're doing the things that they're doing. So it's actually like it almost feels a little bit counterintuitive, where it's like they might actually be able to use AI a lot more effectively because the small business can implement it faster, but it doesn't mean they'll get the same results as fast as opposed to someone who maybe implements it slower, but it's really pushing them in one direction more effectively.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because larger organizations obviously have more defined supply chains and processes and things like that, and the risk of changing any of those things is higher. But they run them and they run them and they run them every day, and everyone knows their job and everyone knows their part and everyone knows their role in it. A small business can swap and change. It can pivot quickly. It can take a new tool, change this one out, things like that. They maybe not as quite as defined in it. They certainly can benefit from a very large variety of tools that they can use, especially in the AI space. A lot of SaaS tools that gives them a huge benefit. When you're looking for enterprise, which needs predictability and consistency, that's where that's where that changes this whole conversation, and being able to deliver on that is really critical for them. And that also is where their benefit comes from. I mean, when you're talking, if you're doing 100 or 200 or $2 billion in sales on something, your system, your intelligent automation system that can maybe just change the cost of something by a fraction of a percent, but over 1 million items over the year. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of time savings. That would be a lot more humans to hire if you had to have that many more humans to grow that much, right? So you can look at some of these what look like big, heavy, human intensive processes at these enterprises, and only making a small change to that. Well, maybe you've just doubled their capacity, but you didn't change their cost very much. All right, that's a fantastic result for them, because the numbers are just so big. You only need to make little differences to make big differences for their balance sheet. So I kind of like that look at it too. And we look at what happened in factories in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s as they went to robotics. They got rid of a lot of the human people working the actual supply, the line. And yeah, there was a big investment at the time to put in these robots to do all these sort of things, but you almost got rid of scarcity in a lot of that cases. They could produce endless amounts of cars, endless amounts of any of these things. The humans still managed it all, but they had to do the other jobs. But now we start looking at that in terms of those marginal costs fell a lot for all those sort of things after they did the initial investment. So we're looking at that now really when we're talking about these manual workflows, manual processes inside organizations where there's much more human involvement there. Is that the new factory floor? Where all these manual processes happen with humans running them? Kind of is, okay? We're not talking about using robots to take those human jobs, but we're saying, well, how do we get that human 10x by taking away some of those manual tasks that they do that slow them down every day, that are repetitive, that, that the robotic process could do in this case, with the human managing it and supporting it instead and co-piloting it through it. I think that's the transformation we're going to go through, like we're going through right now. When people talk about this AI transformation, there's a lot of, like we talked about before, the media has lots of great headline grabbing things. And I call what we do kind of the unsexy plumbing. It's almost like behind the scenes. It's internal to the organization. We're looking at manual workflows and processes. Yeah, that gets everyone excited in the morning right away. You can hardly wait to get into talking about manual workflows. But it's the unsexy plumbing that is really the strategic advantage of the competitive position of these companies. And if you can make a difference there, a couple percent or a fraction of a percent, you're talking about big money in the end for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you see kind of the hype of AI agents, and it's like if you go to an enterprise client, there's no reason for them to start trying to add a bunch of new agents. Like there's so much risk to that, and it's really funny as you started talking about that. That's like exactly what I was thinking about, was the sort of economies of scale, and how like you can have a 5-person team and you can 100x, their output, but it's gonna be a lot less than if you know 0.5x a company that's doing a million iterations of something per month, right? That's actually a lot bigger to grow 50% than 500 in a small team, um, and then
Exactly.
if you just iterate on those small improvements in these massive organizations over time, it's just exponential as compared to a small organization that's just like running as fast as they can. And I mean, every business starts somewhere, and so like
Oh
it's I
yeah.
think I think the small businesses have in some ways a competitive advantage to how fast they can scale because they're able to implement AI from the outset. But a lot of these bigger organizations are going to see a lot bigger returns from smaller incremental improvements.
Yeah, yeah. And it's those bigger ones because they're doing such vast scale already, and this is, even scaling them further. That's why that accuracy, that micro tuning for highly accurate results, that ability to have auditable reasoning, that ability to make easy changes to the instruction set makes all those guardrails, like as you said, that we put on in our system matter so much because you can scale. But if you're not accurate or if you're not achieving compliance, if you're not hitting all those sorts of things, then that scale didn't matter. Now, in a small organization, you got 2 or 3 people around it, they can quickly capture those errors and fix them manually. Well, if you're generating on a million pieces, a million items automated for a large organization, you have to have a very, very high level of manage and compliance. Otherwise, they're not going to achieve the goals. They're not going to get the ROI because they're going to have to swap in too many humans again to fix what was being done that wasn't done well enough. We've already seen that in the difference in the testing we've done between fine tuning and micro tuning. Fine tuning, yeah, you can get to this level of accuracy, but then you still need that much more human involvement to redo stuff. Okay, well, if you're gonna have to be doing that much redo on it, then you didn't really achieve your goals. Why we focused in on micro tuning for that accuracy, that compliance, that requirement to be compliant all the time, and easily upgrades to those SOPs, clients, contracts, SLAs, whatever it is that needs to be in the knowledge base embedded in there. Those are the key things that will drive at the enterprise level that trust that you need in the system, in order to them to adopt and then successfully achieve that ROI, which has been a challenge for some organizations because of lack of accuracy and lack of flexibility, lack of being able to curate it to exactly what they need to do with their way of doing things.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems like we kind of went full circle there, and it's kind of looping
I think so. I think
looping this.
we must be at the end.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for this conversation today, Vance. It was really fascinating to dive into this enterprise AI world with you and explore these different topics. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ethan. I really enjoyed it too. And yeah, you've got great knowledge in this space and great experience in this space. So it's really enjoyable to engage with you on this and explore. And I hope we get more chance to do it again.
Absolutely, me too.